When I was a teenager, I loved adventure stories. I read um, Jack London and all kinds of anything I could find about people doing very unlikely and courageous exploits in the world. And the more unlikely, the better. Um, So, somewhere between fantasy and adventure is where my mind went. And when I left my family and got out into the world, I didn't see why I shouldn't have an adventurous life. And now that I look back from my mid 80s, I wonder what it was all about. And I also wonder if other people my age are kind of doing a summing up of what they went through and try to draw lessons from it, asking themselves why they had to do those specific things. You do have a lot of opportunities, you have decisions to make, who you're going to marry, where you're going to live, what kind of work you're going to do. Um, and I realize my options were more open than most. Um, I I don't consider myself especially charismatic or attractive, but I had a lot of skirmishes, romantic skirmishes with very interesting young ladies, and now from this vantage point, I ask myself, did I learn anything? Why did I have to do that? Um, it can be a real distraction from what you're really built for, what you should be doing. Um, and there are millions of ways to get lost in the world. And somehow or other, I guess I must have had some kind of inner gyroscope. I eventually ended up feeling that I really did get on my path. But when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would get on it for a few minutes and get off it and wander around and do things that really I maybe there were lessons. Maybe I learned what not to do. But some of those adventures I'm glad I had, especially foreign travel. Um, I remember one time thinking another one of my ideas that I didn't have to live in a house. I could live in a converted van and travel the world. That seemed very logical to me. That's who I was. I wasn't practical in the least. So I outfitted a Chevrolet van. I guess this was around 1970, I'm guessing, um, and shipped it to France. My girlfriend was French. We visited some of her friends in Paris, but it was cold. It was too cold. It was probably March, but it was not like March in Texas. It was cold living in that van. And so we started going south. And we got to the south of France and it was still too cold. We went into Spain, spent week or two around Barcelona, and it was still too cold, and we went south to Malaga, and it was still too cold, and we thought, well, let's go to Greece. So we got on an Italian ship from Malaga to Piraeus with several stops in between. Um, and um, and it was still pretty cold. So we drove around Crete. We were still trying to go south. I drew the line at Turkey. I, I was done. I was going to stay in Greece, and got lost in the wilds of Crete. Drove through vineyards. Surprised some Greek peasants working in their fields with um, a van going through their property with Texas license plates on it. And then coming back on a cargo ship that left from Piraeus and took 4 or 5 different stops in various places. Um, and of course, we would always get off and we would see these places that normally I never would have gone to, um, and ate the bad food on the cargo ship, and took as long as it took, and landed in New York and drove back down to Texas. Now, that didn't feel like a very successful trip because we were running away from the cold weather the whole time. And that van was pretty rusted by the time we got back because it had stayed on deck instead of down in the hold um, through all of these high waves and so on, and that salt water and the air created a huge amount of rust up underneath. And that was kind of a symbol of the outcome, the gist of that trip. I guess I learned something. What did I learn? Not to ever do that again. Um, but out of all of these different strange adventures, like living in New York and buying an old loft building in Soho, and then finding myself having to deal with the mafia, um, I did. I tried to do things that I couldn't do. I was such a naive person that I kept running into the realities of the world and being educated, I guess. Um, in the meantime, I was always an artist. In the meantime, I was always reading, I was always writing, and painting when I could. Um, Finally, in my 50s, I moved to France and really made it work. And we were in that house for 22 years, and we worked on the house every day of those 22 years, even when we were sick of it. And I painted every day, and there were so many things that engaged us, from the sense of community in the village to the nature around us. And this was in the east of France, not very far from the Swiss border. And that kind of commitment, that kind of challenge, actually, I can say it made me a better person. It made me a more substantial person. I learned a lot of skills, just house building skills. My painting got very much better. And I developed intellectually and probably spiritually. I actually was surprised that a lot of my physical ailments that I'd had since age 12 when I was in a bad accident um, just disappeared. Um, and I think it was because I was living as my real self. I was not trying to live. I was just living, and not even thinking about time, not thinking about um, whether I should be doing something that I wasn't doing. I just had so much in front of me, and I enjoyed it. There was just a huge amount of pleasure that went with those challenges. Um, Creating something outside of myself in a lot of different ways. And that actually exteriorizing things that were in me and making my ideas become real in the material world was extremely satisfying. Now, I saw somebody recently who said they um, they think that there are two ways to grow in the world as who you are, and grow spiritually. One is become quiet, meditate a lot, and the other is to create, to bring things out of yourself. And I have tried meditation, and um, there have been times when I felt like it was revelatory. I really got something out of it. But I do think that for me, exteriorizing what is inside of me, and like doing a painting and putting it on the wall, it's like looking into a mirror of your soul. You see something there you didn't even actually know was you, and it is really comforting. There's something really satisfying about that. Now, I have uh, seen there are painters that say, I paint a painting and then I turn it to the wall. I don't want to see it. I find that very strange. I think Peter Plagens said that one time. Francis Bacon may have said that, but there are some paintings that I'm glad I didn't do. I haven't done. I wouldn't be interested in that. I want to create something that I want to see, that I want to live with. Like, it's a beautiful presence. If it's a beautiful presence, and I feel like that came out of me, then I feel justified in my life. I feel that this is why I'm alive. So after several decades of stumbling around and having a kind of inkling of what I was built for, what I should be doing, I ended up doing it. And between the ages of 52 and at least 75, I was really 100% committed to that kind of life. And then it all collapsed. Um, but here I am doing a totally different kind of creativity and discovering new things. That period came to an end, and maybe it came to an end naturally. At the time, I didn't think so, but now, looking back at it, I have this feeling that I was not meant to do that forever. I was meant actually to find something else in myself. And that something else has to do with my voice. And I don't mean my physical voice, I mean what I have to say, what I have to write, and what I can put into the world from my perspective, whatever insights I might have, whatever search I'm on, that can actually resonate with other people and maybe contribute to their lives. It's not impossible to think that. It's not something that could never happen. And I think actually it should be a lot more common. It should be something that each person can find in themselves what it is they have to give to the world and give it. And that's actually what we've come here for. It comes down to that. Now, maybe there are people who don't go through decades of stumbling around and being confused and trying things that don't work like I did. But I don't feel like, maybe because I've uh, had a long life already, but I don't feel like that was wasted time. Not for me. I feel like I was learning something at a deeper level by going through all of these things where I tried things that didn't work. Um, anyway, that is a little synopsis of a lesson that I myself learned.